Morning, folks. How are you? Sorry, I'm just writing a few things down here still. Bit of a strange one this morning. I got a very early phone call from Jane from QSI who said, "Oh, listen, been able to get a hold of Emily, been able to get a hold of Nick. They're all really happy to talk to you. Unfortunately, it's that time of the night wherever they are in the world. Can we do it at 8 o'clock in the morning?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely, we can do it at 8 o'clock." So here we are at 8 o'clock. Unfortunately, Nick and Emily aren't with us yet, which is a bit of a problem. But we are going to talk about QSI. QSI has been spoken a lot about in the last week, not just here on the Voice of Freedom, but in various other forums in Australia and around the world. Some people have raised concerns. We certainly, Vince and I raised some concerns a week or two ago and have been looking into QSI basically from day one. We have discovered a lot of things that have been said about QSI, a lot of things that have been written about QSI. And so far, we have yet to find any proof of too much of what's written about any of it all. There are a number of people, a number of organizations claiming scam. And of course, this is something we do look out for. We keep a very close eye on scams and that kind of thing. And sometimes it is difficult to tell, particularly in the crypto world. And that's essentially where I started this journey. I know nothing about the crypto world. There's probably an argument to suggest I still know nothing about the crypto world. But thankfully to the education that's been provided through QSI and other places, I've been able to learn more about how this whole crypto thing works. And as I have been saying, and for the last week or so, if not more, I am yet to find a victim. Everybody is crying wolf here, but I am yet to find a victim. You can't have a scam if there isn't a victim, folks. It's that simple. And trying to change the definition of victim isn't going to help. You can't change the definition of victim in all of this. So for those of you that are trying to do that, please stop. It's not going to help you. I can see that one of our guests has finally joined us. I'll welcome Nick Ragonian. G'day, Nick. Nice to finally meet you.
Hi, you too, Carl. Pleasure to meet you.
Just want to thank you for the work that you're doing, Nick. You and Jim are putting out a tremendous series on the Cabal at the moment, and I really do enjoy it. Every episode is certainly an eye-opener for folks who aren't aware of how all that works, and I think you guys are putting together a very, very good learning tool on that whole octopus, so to speak.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You're doing good work as well. Yeah, I've heard a lot of your calls, and I think
we're trying.
Right, that's right. That's all we can do, right?
We're trying. I mean, Aussies are a skeptical mob, mate. Aussies are a skeptical mob, but we are also big embracers of new technology. So this is why I've taken an interest in the whole QSI thing and crypto, for that matter. I don't really understand crypto, and I can't pretend to understand group buying in this sort of thing. But in the last 2 weeks, you're obviously aware that Vince has been doing a great deal of investigation into QSI, and we've come up with some questions, but we haven't come up with anything that says scam. We cannot in any way call QSI a scam. And I base that, in fact, I don't know if you heard it when you just joined, but I base a lot of that on the fact that I cannot find a victim anywhere in the world. Been asking, can't find anybody who holds their hand up to say, I am a victim of QSI. So you've had a pretty hard couple of weeks, I imagine, with all of this. Can you explain to us where all that started and why we should feel pretty comfortable with QSI?
Yes. In terms of victimization, I've been an investment portfolio manager for over 30 years. And that happens. The same thing happens in the investment world as well, where people will act independently of what advice they get about making a particular investment. For example, options. The first rule of options is never over leverage. But the people that end up losing a lot of money are those that don't follow that rule, and they end up putting in a bunch of money trying to make a killing. And then when they lose, they want to blame the option, the underwriter, the firm that recommended them, and so on and so forth. It's been said over and over that this is something that is for the long-term when we go over to the new quantum financial system. It's also been said many, many times that this is a illiquid and immature market. So you don't want to be committing large amounts of money into an immature or a new market where there's no liquidity. And we repeat this over and over and over, but unfortunately, people kind of do what they want to do. And when something happens that they overcommit and didn't realize that it was illiquid and the tokens temporarily drop in value, they feel that they've been scammed. And there's been a lot of misinformation put out there by certain channels on Telegram, knowing that people's knowledge is not that deep about how the system works. So they're able to manipulate people into thinking that there's something illegitimate or some type of a scam going on, when the markets themselves, the tokens, are behaving just as an illiquid market should, because there's not a lot of buyers and sellers right now. There's only maybe a few thousand people that are in there, and not a lot of money in terms of markets. And we talk about this constantly, that looking at a stock market, for example, probably one of the smallest microcap stocks on the exchange have 50 times as much money in one stock than this whole entire thing has in Stellar. So when you don't have liquidity, any movement on the up or the down, meaning putting in a buy order or a sell order, is going to have a dramatic effect on the price of the token, because there's not a lot of buyers and not a lot of sellers. So there's a big difference between what someone wants to sell at, because the seller always wants to get the highest price and the buyer always wants to get the lowest price. So if somebody just arbitrarily comes in, which is what these people have done also, the ones that are spreading the misinformation, if somebody comes in and just starts selling indiscriminately, it's going to affect the price, because there's no buyers really there yet, because we're the only group of people that are committing money to this. So once you go in a group fund, I go in a group fund, we made our commitment. We're not buying after that. We've made our commitment into it. So there's no liquidity after that. You got to know that when you're in at that moment, that this is something you're going to have to sit with for a period of time. And we've made that clear over and over and over. It's not like we said, you're coming in now, you're going to make a killing in a week. So, this
so
is
Nick, is this a human nature greed thing? Because what I've sort of discovered in my investigations in the last couple of weeks has been that people are taking the QSI tip, if you like, out of the educational aspects, and then going back through their own trading system and buying the asset, if you like, outside of the QSI environment, and the asset goes to nothing. Now, then they say, well, how can I sell an asset that's worth nothing? Like you say, there's not too many buyers in the market. They seem to be missing the salient point. It's a group buy that happens through a group, and you don't sell. You hang on to it at the moment. That's what I'm getting out of this. You hang on to this until something we'll get to talk about hopefully soon with Emily, if she joins us, is Protocol 20, which is the flushing of liquidity into these assets. And obviously, when is that going to happen? How is that going to happen? And I believe that's all involved with, the great financial reset. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, let me differentiate between the individual buys and the group buys. The reason the group buys were set up is that most people don't have the financial capability to buy a large enough amount of the initial coin offering to reach these certain thresholds where you get some type of an incentive. So similar to a mutual fund, where a person that doesn't have much money can't buy a portfolio of 100 stocks because they don't have enough money to buy each stock. So what they do is they pool together money of a group together with a common interest. They all go in with the aggregate amount, and everybody owns a piece of the mutual fund. So a person's able to actually buy a full portfolio doing it that way versus trying to do it on their own. They just don't have the financial capability to do so. In terms of these offerings,
if you wanted to go it alone, and I'm no great, knowledge on stockbroking and working stocks from home, but if you were to take a QSI tip, if you like, out of the educational environment, take it back out go through your own trade system and buy whatever the asset was through your system, are you not circumventing A, the greater good of the trade with the group, but B, you are simply putting yourself out at the far end of the market, right on the end of the fluctuations? Because if the core group moves to sell an asset at some point, let's say once liquidity is flushed into them, is the person who's sitting outside the group going to have to sit there and watch those stock lines on a computer 24 hours a day to pick the peak point for them to sell? Because that's what I think they're trying to do at the moment. They're trying to buy the asset or see the asset inside the education system, buy it outside of the system, and then try and take the profit at some point down the track. And it's not working for them. That's where they're seeing the scammers coming. Is that
Well,
where
to a degree, the
generated?
group fund was done for the people's benefit because before we had group funds, we basically did buy them individually. And we had initial coin offerings, and whoever could buy them with whatever amount of monies they had available would buy them. But by doing it this way, people are able to reach a threshold where they're getting some type of an incentive from the developer of the coin that they wouldn't be able to reach otherwise by themselves. So it was actually done for the people's benefit, where they're getting something back where they normally would not get something back. Now, you can buy these individually, and we have bought them individually. Whether you buy them individually or not wouldn't affect necessarily the price of the coin itself. What has to be known is when you're buying it, that whether you're buying a group fund or not group fund, this is an illiquid market right now. It's a longer term investment. And whether you're doing it on your own or not doing it on your own, you should know that, and you shouldn't be committing very large amounts of money, knowing if the goal is to get out of it quickly or make some type of a short-term profit, that's not going to happen until there's real liquidity in this market, which won't happen until after we change over to the new system. So people are going in there and they're treating it as their other investments, like a stock or something, where they're buying in, they're saying, "Oh, I put in a lot of money here and it went down," and that should be known before you step in. That's the same thing with any investment, that you should know what you're getting into before you get into it, and then not after the fact say, "Oh, gee, I didn't realize that this this possibly could happen." And then, this constantly happens, as I said, even on the stock side as well. But the group fund was really derived as a benefit. It's a lot of work on QSI's part to do all this, to distribute all the monies out, to collect all the monies, to do the accounting and everything else. So it's really a very big benefit that people should be thankful to have the opportunity to participate in, because otherwise they wouldn't be getting all of these additional incentives that actually lower your risk and your cost of getting involved in the coin.
Yeah,
Hey,
sure.
Nick, can you mute your Telegram real quick? Because it's
Yes, I'm sorry.
So trying to sum up in like layman details, because I'm not as technically savvy or financially savvy as Nick is. The difference between buying it outside of a group fund versus buying it inside of a group fund would be like going to the store and buying a widget versus going to wholesale and buying a widget, right? Like going to Costco, you're buying in bulk. You're getting the same thing. The only difference is how much are you paying versus how much are you getting back. That's all. Same exact widget that you're buying, no matter what. So I apologize. I kind of just jumped in the middle of this call.
No, I haven't even said hello, Emily. So thanks for joining us, Emily. I really appreciate you coming on tonight, your time. So yeah, great.
And Carl, I want to say thank you so much for actually watching the video, because and I'm talking about the debunk video that Nick and I had done about, I think 2 weeks ago, or no, something like that. Because there are so many people running around with their heads, screaming, and they are causing such a scene. Some of them are doing it intentionally, right? Because they're part of the cabal. They want to create the FUD and stir things up. And some people are doing it because they just don't know. But we've been trying to get this video out to everybody because there's so much information packed into that 2 hours. Like Nick and I really put, as you see, Nick and I have really put a lot of effort into getting every detail in there, all the confessions about what all the Khazarians are doing. And so if people just watch that, then they're going to understand. But instead, we have so many people who just they're lazy. They don't want to watch it. And instead of like, sitting down and putting 2 hours into it, they'd rather spend 20 hours and try to chase this down, which actually doesn't make a lot of logical sense.
No, and isn't it strange? It's a bit like human nature, isn't it? If you present something to people, and we don't expect people to swallow things that are presented to them without question, but human nature is a very interesting beast, and the way that it's been playing out in the last 2 weeks, particularly in this sphere, I've found particularly intriguing. There is some Australian involvement here, obviously with Quantum Brownie, and I've had the pleasure of meeting him. We've had a conversation. Once again, he can't supply me an answer of show me a victim. You guys have been shouted down quite heavily in the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
There has been noises about ructions inside the whole thing, inside the QSI movement. I think a lot of this comes from people not really understanding that you guys, and I'm going out on a limb here because it's what I think you are doing. I think you are working toward and inside the next financial system. People do not understand Protocol 20. They do not understand Protocol 19. In fact, when you say those words to them, their eyes roll into their head. They don't understand what that is. Now, Protocol 20, from my investigation, I see is intrinsically linked to every asset that you push. For people who do not understand what Protocol 20 is, Emily, can you please, in layman's terms, explain how Protocol 20 changes everything in the asset realm?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's leave assets aside for a quick second. Protocol 20, let's call it a nickname. The nickname would be the quantum matrix overall. So aside from just assets, we're talking about the paradigm of bringing regulation in, making everything legitimate, moving into, when I say smart cities, guys, I'm not talking about the World Economic Forum version of a smart city. I'm talking about the white hat version of a smart city. And so it's basically moving into this quantum matrix where everything is tied together with full transparency, and it ties in conjunction with these assets, which a lot of them are more than just, let's call them more than just a pure investment vehicle. A lot of them are about, how do you create the future? How do you bring about things like Jacera, the UBI, like the quantum healing technologies, space travel, right? So there's so many things involved in it where it's more than just a financial platform for people to invest in.
Yeah, all the technologies that have been suppressed from us are part of Protocol 20. All of the transportation and methods of food production and everything that ties
These are
into our
these
lives.
6,000 odd patents that have been
Right.
hidden from us.
They're
right.
getting
So-
slowly released. Yep.
So 20
Yeah,
encompasses not just the financial side, but everything involved in our day-to-day lifestyles that have been, in terms of the debt slavery and the food production, what we eat, the way we transportation, manufacturing, everything will be going to a new and different phase going forward that will be beneficial to us rather than to the cabal. So Protocol 20 encompasses all of that. And the Stellar ecosystem and these tokens are part of that, because Emily and I talk about this all the time. If you can't look at this isolated by itself and believe everything else, meaning if you believe that this era is going to happen, if you believe that Trump is coming back and that the Q military plan is actually true, that the markets are going to crash. If the financial markets are going to come down because they've been a very, very frequent place of the cabal, the traffic, human trafficking money, black pools, using money for illicit purposes. If that's coming down, then where does the money for investments go to? Where does it shift to? The only platform infrastructure that's been built currently is the Stellar platform that has all of the components that we have now in terms of world indexes and commodities and companies and so on and so forth. So if you believe in the other part of it, and you say, well, they're going to crash the financial markets and then they're going to shift that liquidity into a new place, where's it going? It has to be here. That's what all of this preparation is for, so that when this money comes over, that there will be a home for it, that people will be able to access, which we will be doing probably most of our transactions digitally. whether you go into a supermarket or anything else, you'll be using the Stellar platform probably the majority of your day. So, to say that this is a scam and say everything else is true, it doesn't work, because without this, you can't have the other pieces. You can't have the whole plan come to fruition.
How are the assets created, Emily? One of the sticking points that Vince came upon when he was investigating was he went through my wallet. I've got assets in Tesla, Microsoft, and the big one that came out a couple of days ago, Red Cross.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how can you create an asset in a company name that you have nothing to do with? That was the first point that he wanted to bring up. So how does an asset like Microsoft, like Tesla, like Red Cross, which is a private company, a private members company, so it can't actually trade an asset. So I understand we're thinking two different financial systems here, but can you explain to people how you can create an asset under the name of a global company that is not associated with that global company in any way?
Yeah, so that's actually a really, really good question. The simple answer is anybody in the world can mint an asset on Stellar, right? Because that's part of the whole decentralized platform. And that's actually what causes the confusion at the same time. So let's take Red Cross as the example. If you create a Red Cross token, then Carl has one, and I can create one, and then I would have one, right? And so you could have an infinite number of Red Cross tokens. So it begs the question, how do you know which one is legitimate from not legitimate? Or are there any legitimate ones? Are they all scam assets instead? Right? I think that's actually the real question behind what Carl's trying to get. What Vince is trying to get at. Most people are trying to ask. And so the reason why we work exclusively with certain developers is because these developers have already been vetted by various governments. And so what they do is part of them, I'll give an example. So there's a team called Stellar Switzerland. They go by the name of SPIA. There's another team called Stellar VBRF. And these are massive companies that already exist. And they'll go out and they'll create partnerships with those companies. So for instance, like, Deutsche Bank or Bank of China, or there are thousands of names at this point. What they'll do is actually go to those companies, sign the contract. So now there's an agreement in place. And of course, unfortunately, there's a lot of NDAs in place at the same time as well. And that's what also causes a lot of confusion. So the reason why this has really taken off in terms of the Q movement, like certain groups of patriots who understand it better than others, is because you have to understand how to decode. That's kind of the first layer. And then, like what Nick was saying earlier, you have to understand the importance of the Q plan and then the eventuality of Jacera. And if those things do not resonate with you, then none of this stuff will make any sense whatsoever. And that's what the Khazarians are doing, right? Like in the debunk video, they told you plainly, I don't believe in the white hats. I don't believe in the wealth transfer. That's just a big hoax, right? So you have to have like all these little pieces in your favor before you can even attempt to learn about this stuff. Now, what is the big difference between, let's say, a developer versus an unknown developer? So there's something called KYC AML. It stands for Know Your Customer, Anti-Money Laundering. You may or may not have heard of that before. And we just did a very short call on that the other day. But it's basically multiple steps of authorization validation. And I can't give you exactly, there are a couple things that I do know that SPIA does. There are a couple things that I don't know what SPIA does. But I do know that there are multiple layers of authorization required. And what happens is they actually link whoever you're trying to represent, they will actually link it into the government database. So, Carl, if you are trying to mint an asset and you're trying to claim that you are, minting the Red Cross asset and you are the legitimate person, then you have to go over to SPIA and present yourself and say, hi, I'm Carl, I'm the CEO or whatever it is. And he's going to validate you based on your government ID. Then he's going to do a video call to make sure that you are who, the ID that you claim to be. And then they're going to check your wallets and do all the other stuff in the background that I don't have access to.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how you're able to either pass a KYC or not pass a KYC. And what a lot of these other scammers are doing is they're just minting assets and they're anonymous people. And and they don't go through the KYC process. They don't have any legitimate, let's say, team behind them, strategy behind them. They're basically, yes, they are money laundering, right? So they mint all these assets, plethora. There are hundreds of thousands of assets on Stellar right now, and they're trying to siphon little XLM here and there by almost like fooling people into thinking that they're the legitimate ones, so they can make a buck here or there.
This is
I'm sorry, can I interject here?
Sorry, Nick.
Emily just gave you kind of the behind the scenes advanced answer to your question. I think what you're referring to is, as you said, Red Cross is not, let's say, a corporation per se. So how can there be a Red Cross token, or how can there be a McDonald's token? And Emily and I just did a call on this. I don't know if you got to see that call regarding, it was called SPACs, Special Purpose Acquisition Companies. Okay, because we had mentioned to Jane that maybe we should forward this to you. People are getting confused by the fact that when a token has a name of a particular company, that actually is a representation of the company itself. Okay, and here's the problem with that rationale. If you know the whole plan, for example, Red Cross, anybody who has followed what Red Cross has done is they have been part of the cabal trafficking money. They've been involved with, and there's many videos on it. You can go look it up yourself. They're basically part of the cabal. So when a token is minted, all of these tokens are minted based on some type of a transaction that's going to occur with that particular company or name in the future that's going to fund these tokens. For example, let's say with Red Cross that they know it's illegitimate. Trump has executive orders. Anybody who's been involved with human trafficking as such, their assets will be seized and then they will be distributed. So when you see a Red Cross token, it's not a representation of the Red Cross as we see it today. What that token represents is that in the future, is going when this all happens and Trump comes back as president and these seized assets are distributed back to the people, that token will be a recipient of part of those funds. So it's not the Red Cross, it's it will represent a future transaction that's going to occur. And it might be seized assets or a liquidation of a company or just breaking companies up into divisions, whatever it is. It's something that will occur down the road that will give these tokens value. So you're buying basically, and I used it in this video, the term special purpose acquisition company. There are securities out there today that are known as SPACs, SPAC. It's an acronym, Special Purpose Acquisition Company. I kind of twisted it and made my own term out of it, saying SPAC, Special Purpose Acquisition Coin. But what you're really buying when you're buying these tokens, and this is something that has to be really driven home with people that are investing in this. When you're buying this, for example, Red Cross, you're not buying the Red Cross company itself. You're not buying any operations or assets or anything currently related to the company. What you're buying is a probability bet in the future that when this whole flip occurs and when they start distributing the assets from all of these companies that have been involved with illicit activity, part of those funds are going to be placed into these tokens as part of kind of like a settlement where they're going to give us back our birth certificate money and mortgage money and so on and so on. Some of those assets will be put into these, and these are being created now for that purpose in the future. So that's why you're not, you don't pay 1/10,000th of a penny for something. If you're really buying, BlackRock or McDonald's, if you go on the exchange, it doesn't cost you 1/10,000th of a penny. It costs you $200 a share or whatever. So those are actual representations and ownership of those companies as they exist today. These are being
going forward with what you've just explained there. Would it be possible? Obviously, after all this has come in, would it be possible for an individual to create their own coin based on their own wealth? And would that then be a willable coin or a transferable wealth in the event of your death or whatever? Is this the way that our personal money is going to go in the future?
Yes and no. So, and yes, you can do it in theory, but you probably would not want to use a Stellar asset for it. And the reason behind that is, remember that these are on the decentralized exchange. So if you mint your token, and let's say You've got $100 million in the bank and you want to will it to your kids. If you place it on the open market, anybody in the world can buy that. So anybody in the world has access to your wealth. It's not going down to your children, right? It's not the inheritance that you're looking for. So there are other kind of vehicles, for instance, like the NFT market, right? That stands for non-fungible token. And there are other versions of it where you can make it fungible, meaning you can mutate it a little bit. Those are what's going to be used actually for things like wills, estate law, real estate, etc.
So what we're really talking about with the method in QSI, if you are an investor in the stock exchange, you would call what we're talking about now speculative investing. Is that the best way to term it in a free market understanding of current stock exchange terminology? You're speculating, you're going to invest in the asset, hopeful that in the future it will get liquidity into it and there'll be a bonus come back.
Well, there's two terms of speculation. One is that it represents something risky, and the other one is that you're investing in something that's new and not something that's out there in existence. So from that
that's what I was trying to get at. Something new.
From that standpoint, it's correct, because really, let's think about this. When you do an investment, and Emily, I've talked about this in countless videos, you always look at your risk-reward ratio when you invest in something, whether it be stock or bond or anything, essentially. So here, your risk-reward is really astronomical, because you really shouldn't be putting multitudes of money in here, because you don't need to put in multitudes of money in order to buy millions of tokens. Okay, so if you put in $1, literally, you could on certain tokens buy 1 billion coins. The most you can lose is $1. If nothing happens, the most you can lose is $1. If, however, what we have said comes to fruition in terms, not we, but the whole plan that's been in place comes to fruition, they might be worth millions of dollars. So what else, aside from maybe a lottery ticket, can you buy for $1 that you can essentially have a return on of millions of dollars? And certainly the odds are way better here than in a lottery ticket. So, from the standpoint of risk, the only way you can really kind of screw this up is if you put in way more money than you should be, because it's an illiquid and immature market. And until that happens, prices can go anywhere. So, knowing that, you should not be committing large amounts of money. And you should know that temporarily they can go to any price, but that doesn't mean the end result is going to be this minimal price or zero. That's only one moment in time. These are not being bought for now. They're being bought for the future after the transformation. So you have to bear that in mind. People are just very short-sighted, and they bought something at 1/10,000th of a penny, and now it's half of 1/10,000th of a penny, and they're complaining that you shouldn't be buying it for that reason. If that's what you're doing it for, go to the stock exchange or go buy options or something else.
I want to piggyback on what Nick is saying, because I think if we put things into a bigger context, right? Who are the kind of people who would invest into something like Stellar at this moment before the flip, before liquidity? Everything's under NDA. It would be somebody who's like the type that has invested into the RV currencies, right? Like the Zim bonds or the dinars, etc. Or the people who are speculating that gold and silver is going to revalue. These are the kind of people who would. It wouldn't be anybody else in the world, because they don't believe in the RV that we believe in. And the main difference I want to drive is, if I reiterate what Nick is saying, because of the price of the tokens, let's say you have, a budget of $1,000. Would you rather spend your $1,000 to get, I don't even remember what the exchange rate is, but let's say whatever dong or whatever dinar, right? Because there's a certain exchange ratio on that one. Or would you put it into Stellar and you can get bajillions, right? So that's how I would advise people to do. If they're looking to invest, you might as well diversify based on the same strategy, because the principle is the same, whether it's a digital currency or a physical currency. They're all going to be asset backed.
Greed plays a huge role in the human psyche, and we have been trained, programmed, if you like, to be greedy people. Not all of us. I know that there are generous people in the world, but we see an opportunity, and our first thought is to snavel that opportunity away and keep it for ourselves, take it out of the environment where we've discovered it and try and make it work for us. And then it all falls over. We tend to go and blame where we got whatever that tip was from. How do we, and I know it's a part of the training for QSI, and I guess it comes down to the discernment that we talk about. I've had some interaction with a lot of people in the QSI movement all around the world, and I am consistently met with people who feel the same way I do about helping others. They're all about being able to build things for the future that will not build their bank account, but will make their community better. This, I think, is one of the greatest things about QSI, because it builds a community of humanitarians. Now, it's been hard for many people to understand the humanitarian angle of QSI, judging by some of the emails and whatnot I've got. Where's the proof? Where's the proof? So, Emily, would you like to explain how the humanitarian angle of what's coming works with QSI so closely?
I agree with you, and I'll just add one extra word. So above and beyond discernment, I think it's actually the word frequency is what we're looking for, because the
raising our frequency
is that vibration that puts people at a certain level of understanding without you having to explain it. And so some people resonate with that, right? And resonance is a frequency. And some people will go, well, that's not for me. I want something now. So that's why people will get repelled or people will get pulled into the message or the vision that we offer. In terms of when you talk about humanitarian efforts, are you speaking more about, or are you asking more about QSI specific humanitarian goals, or
yes,
more generalized?
Well, let's start with QSI specific, because I know there are a number of large projects that you're working on behind the scenes, or your teams are working along behind the scenes, but it does go much broader than QSI, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there's going to be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people all around the world who are humanitarians because they want to, right? Like if all of your needs are met, you don't have to worry about bills or your health or your family or anything like that. I think most people in the would want to give back in some capacity, some bigger than others. So basically, we are trying to accommodate some of that, also knowing that there are other groups out there who have a very similar mission at the same time too. We're just doing it primarily through the stellar assets. So if I speak more specifically to QSI's, parts of our humanitarian projects, there's actually something that, Nick would probably have a better term for me, but I've been calling it a quantum fund-to-fund for years now. And it's this concept of, think about like, I'm sure there are people in your audience, maybe you yourself, Carl, who you've invested into like the RV currencies or the bonds. And you're going to go into that RV appointment and they're going to go, okay, here's the exchange rate or however it works, because nobody knows how it's going to work yet.
Yep.
And then the claims are, they're going to say, here's a long list of humanitarian projects that have already been pre-approved. If you don't have a good presentation, you can join one of these, right? That's kind of, roughly what we've all been told for many decades now. So over here in Stellar, it's almost like, well, there's no pre-approved thing that you have to participate in. There are projects like some of the tokens, and you can participate in that if you choose to invest. But with the wealth transfer, just by holding a plethora of assets, you're going to receive abundance. And then however you choose to then manifest that into a project, whether it's for your family, your community, for the world, for outer space, it doesn't matter. You have the option. It's your choice on how to do it. And so knowing that, we have a lot of people who, I'm sure you see this too, Carl, people get frustrated because you want your friends and your family to understand what you're going through. And most people, I don't know a single person where, my entire family and all of my friends are involved and they know exactly why I follow the Q plan. It hasn't happened yet. Usually it's the opposite. We're ostracized. And so there are so many people who go, well, I want to do it, but I don't know how to do that. How do I, set them up for success in the future as well? So part of what we're going to be doing is creating this quantum fund-to-fund, right? To be later explored for a real name with Nick's help. But people can then pool together some of their assets into like a big, massive collection. And then we as a community will then be able to vet various projects that are being presented by the community. So for instance, like QSI now is, just over 50,000 people around the world, but one day it'll become 5 million people, or maybe 500 million people. We don't know. We don't know what that number is going to look like. And so, excuse me, there are going to be brilliant people coming in and out all the time. And if they have a great presentation and they want to say, hey, I missed out on that RV bond, how can I get funding for it? Well, all the wealth transfer is coming into the Stellar system, regardless of if they got the Zim bonds or the dinar and the dong, right? Everything's coming into Stellar. So if those people have missed out, but they want to get the funding for whatever project they have, they can come and give a presentation. And then we as a community will vet the presentations, listen, we'll vote, we'll decide which projects to fund. And because these people are part of our community, there's a lot more accountability and transparency. And also within the community, you can go and network with them and join their projects if you're passionate about it. And so this is how we plan to help countless projects all over the world, just like what many others are doing. We're just choosing to do it primarily with Stellar assets, but not exclusively.
So what sort of scale will that work on, Emily? Will that be, down to a local community level, or will it be done at a sort of a state capital level and work its way out from there?
That's a really good question. We're going to have a little bit of everything. We'll probably focus more on the big stuff first, but as QSI grows over time, right? Because if there's a huge difference between if a community is 100,000 people versus if it's 100 million people. If we have 100 million people that are, collectively involved in not just QSI, but Stellar in general, then we can definitely go down into that local, rural, even the apartment level, right? Like a block of the community, a school district of the community. But if you have 100,000 people, you'd probably want to focus more broadly and say, hey, how could I have mass sweeping changes instead? And so let's focus on the big picture first before we start to drill down. Operationally speaking, that always makes more sense business-wise.
Yeah, sure.
Can I?
How many?
I'm sorry. Can I think what we want to clarify here is that when we say what QSI is doing, QSI has been chosen to bring these vehicles to the people. They've chosen to work together with the developers. They're not the developers per se of these tokens. They're not the one. They've been chosen to bring it to the people. So they're not developing these the tokens and things. They're working with these people because they were chosen to do so. And with regards to Humanitarian, we know that in the past, only the elites have had the opportunities to be able to create these big wealth opportunities in forms of stocks and other investments where the average person has not had the ability at all to participate in the wealth creation. It's always been the rich get richer because they have the ability to invest in many of the things that the average person does not. The beauty of the way that they've set this up here is that even a person who has no money, essentially, or a dollar, can actually create generational wealth for themselves and their family and have humanitarian funds going forward. There's never been an opportunity like that out there in existence currently, other than what's happening now. And it makes sense because we're getting away from the old cabal mentality that the elites rule the world and the rest of the world is essentially subservient to them. This is an opportunity for somebody who never had an opportunity in their lives to create generational wealth for their families to be able to do it. So Emily and QSI and others are the messengers per se to the people, showing them the opportunity. It's up to them as to whether or not they believe it, they want to accept it. And, just by the mere fact that probably 1/10,000 or 1,000th of 1% of the world's population is even aware of this, it means that only a small amount of people will resonate with it, understand it, and it'll probably be those people that do want to be real humanitarians and do want to do true humanitarian work that will participate in this. And those that are looking to make money for themselves or just get rich or whatever, probably in the end result will not be there at the when all is said and done. Just like on the RV, there's very few people that are even aware that it exists, the currency side of it. It's the same here. And I think that's apropos because most of the people here are not really wealthy multimillionaire people that are trying to just get wealthier. They're people that want to be a humanitarian, have never had the ability financially to do it, and finally they're seeing an opportunity to be able to step in here and help humanity.
I don't know if you find it I don't know if you're finding this, but I find more humanitarian people come from the poorer side of the fence than the richer side of the fence.
Right, because
The
unless you
richer
know
side of the
hunger,
fence.
how can you have compassion for the hungry? Or if
Yeah.
unless you've had no clothes out. So it's the people that have suffered that can really resonate with those that are suffering and that want them not to have to go through that in the future.
And not just financially, but even ideologically. So for instance, when you're looking at the membership of QSI, the vast majority of them are not the CEOs of a big corporation. Some of them are not even upper management. A lot of them are, let's call it, worker bee, for lack of a better term.
Yep. Blue collar workers.
Yeah, these are the people who have, they want what's good, they try, they work very hard, but they're downtrodden, they're oppressed because they're not following the social norm, which is, climb the corporate ladder, kiss your boss's ass, right? These are the things that we actually repel from. And so now these people are given this chance, hey, when you got a second chance, what would you do? Knowing all the things that do not work in your normal 3D world, what would you do to make things better? So that's like that second chance in humanity that we're looking at right now.
I'm particularly interested, given what we've just talked about, the community building aspect of this. I'm involved with a group in Australia called My Place, where we are trying to set up a community group in every town and suburb in every city in Australia. At the moment, we've been able to grow it to nearly 200 venues across the country in a little over 12 months. And it shows no signs of slowing down. Now, these are very community-minded people. Can we, and I'm going to screw this up because of my lack of knowledge and terminology, but Emily, can we use an NFT, a non-fungible token, to promote our town in some way? Most towns, I'm sure, where you live as well, have some kind of a tourist hook to get people into town, to get them to stop to buy a sandwich, buy a milkshake, spend a couple of bucks before they drive on and head on further down the road. Is there a way that we can use these NFTs to promote our local tourism or our local promotable aspect, if you like, and any monies returned into that project go back into the community through that NFT? Can that work?
Yeah, I mean, you can make basically anything work in the future. Would it be better as an NFT or as a fungible token, or the other iterations? Would it be better as a stellar asset or maybe on another blockchain? I don't have the answer for you because I think, well, first of all, a lot of it is unknown right now. It's just too new at this time. So as time progresses, we're going to have much more information for people like us to make better decisions about, what direction we want to go. But the theory behind it is absolutely true. Can you fundraise for a certain thing that has a certain purpose that's completely transparent? Everybody can track where did that money come from? More importantly, where is that money going to? Right? Whose hands and how many hands is it passing? That's the point of blockchain. So yes, the principle behind it is absolutely true. You could.
And the other thing you have to remove the layer of corrupt government and corrupt people that are in the way that are stopping you from being able to promote your neighborhoods and your communities and so on, with all the red tape and all of the people in power that are part of the cabal that don't want that to happen. They want none of that to happen. They want people to stay in the positions that they are. So until you remove all of that, which is part of obviously the operation, then it'll be a much easier task to be able to go forward and to do that, because going in their face with them having the power now is very difficult. Same thing with the court system as well. I mean, if you have a corrupt court system, you're walking in losing before you even walk in the door. So all that has to be removed, and that's part of obviously the operation, both from a federal level, state, city. All of the corrupt players have to be taken out of their positions and replaced with people that really do care about their communities and their cities and their country.
Yeah, and as a reminder, because I think most people who've been studying this information for quite some time, they are familiar with the concept of in the future there's coming quantum blockchain voting. I think people have heard of that term. Well, guys, that's going to be on the stellar ecosystem as well. So imagine, because it's blockchain and it's immutable, you can vote, but you can only vote once. And everybody in the whole world can see, because once it's on the ledger, you cannot change the ledger. And you cannot, I take back my vote. You cannot vote twice. You cannot vote with dead names because they can track everything.
Right.
Right. So that goes back to what Nick was saying earlier about, the transparency, the honesty behind it. So guys, everything's getting baked into Stellar. And that's the reason why I'm so excited about this particular platform.
Yeah, I think I'm feeling the same now that I understand it a lot more too. Can I just bring up the elephant in the room? It must be terribly frustrating for you guys that you release an asset and within minutes it has a scam warning thrown up on the exchange. Now, anybody, Jane has explained, Jim has explained, anybody can throw a scam warning up on any asset at any time. Apparently, removing it is much harder.
Yes.
Or do you guys just not bother? I mean, Vince has looked into some of those assets. They don't have white papers. They show all the earmarks, if you like, of a scam. Can you explain what goes on in that situation?
You're a dog, Nick?
Sorry,
I thought it was mine. I thought it was mine.
So the simple kind of procedural steps behind it is, and guys, this is in more detail on the debunk exposure call that Nick and I did. So if you need, more visuals and confessions more specifically, it's all on that call. But what happened
is a great call.
Thank you. So what happened is there's a group of people that I call the Khazarians because it's a combination of known self-described Kabbalists, Illuminati, Boogaloo Boys, etc., right? This collection of people that's been attacking us for over a year now using all the same old stories that we've just been debunking time and time and again. But this group has infiltrated part of the Stellar Development Foundation. So they actually work with a handful of people who control, so as an example, these are third-party engines, right? Lobster is a wallet. It does not belong to Stellar. It's just a developer who created it, and it happens to be on the Stellar blockchain. Now, two of those co-founders are, let's say, being detained right now by the Russian army or friends of the Russian army. So they have not really been around for a long time. But before that, I actually met them, by the way. I met them last June in Texas.
Oh, wow.
I did. And as soon as they saw, well, not saw, as soon as they heard my name and they heard it was QSI, they actually ran for me, which is kind of funny. But so I met Dima and Gleb in person, and they had been infiltrated, but there's a possibility that they're also Cabal themselves because that's why the White Hats have captured them. And there's a lot of, let's say, rumor for now. I'm sure it'll get proven later, when time happens. But rumor for now is that they have a lot of ties to criminal activity, money laundering, prostitution. There's a rumor that they're tied to Hunter Biden's laptop information as well. So we'll see if that comes out in the future, right? So that's one subsegment. Then you have another subsegment, which is stellar.expert, and that's the ledger that most people are using. And the creator of that one, his pseudonym is Orbit Lens, and he also works directly with these Khazarians. So literally, they have gone out, made an alliance with these two groups, and said, "Hey, we believe these are all scams, and this is why I believe it, and this is why you should slap a warning on it." And what they're trying to tell people is that Stellar is doing it. Stellar is not doing it, guys. The actual Stellar Development Foundation has nothing to do with it. There is no scam warning on what's called the Horizon server, which is Stellar's server. So it's only these select third-party companies and their platforms that have slapped a label on there because of defamation. They've also admitted through all of those confessions that there's actually no evidence of a scam. And there was no due diligence done on the scam. It was simply this group of people told that group of people who they're now buddies with, and that group of people said, "Okay, yes, you want it, let's go." Right? So that is pretty much the definition of libel and slander when it comes to
absolutely.
legal activity.
Can I just say, I just want to add something here. People, again, not understanding the inner workings of the financial system can be easily fooled by how somebody presents something, okay? So what we've seen from these people is, look, we see a billion XLMs going from this wallet to Emily's wallet to Binance, and then it's being offloaded, and they're showing all of these movements of funds from the offering going to Emily and the wallet and so on and so forth. The problem with that is that doesn't mean anything, because I've worked in the industry for 30 years. I've moved money all over the world, okay? And I've opened up thousands of accounts for people under one name, but that were being totally run by a whole different entity whatsoever. And because they wanted to maintain anonymity. Okay. The only proof that you would want from these people, and I've asked for it and I've not gotten it, is I'm not interested in all of the movement of monies from the developer to the Emily to Q. Show me the evidence that money has gone from Stellar, out of Stellar, into Emily's bank account or into Whiplash's bank account. That's proof of money being stolen. Anything else with all of this move, we don't know. Look, we don't know the inner workings of the operation. We don't know what the military is doing. We don't know what these monies are meant for. They might say it's Emily's wallet. How do we know it's really Emily's wallet? How do we not know that it's not a military wallet who Emily is the front person for, or Whip is the front person? So just showing money moving around in the system and going from wallet to wallet means nothing unless you see money coming out of there into their own personal accounts. Then you could say they're stealing money. Okay. And so, I mean, so they're always showing all of these. Look, I saw a billion XLMs move here and there. That's meaningless. It doesn't mean a damn thing because people move money around all the time for so many reasons.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, the roller coaster is really funny because what Nick's describing. So, we have eyes into several channels on Telegram, and we know, kind of what the narrative is that they're, peddling like the narrative of the day, so to speak. And what a lot of people have been saying is, oh, look at Emily's group fund wallet. Suddenly it goes from 0 to 100,000 XLM or 1,000,000 XLM and then back down to 0, right? Exactly what Nick was saying a second ago. That must be money laundering. Why is it going up and down all day long? Well, guys, that's literally what the group fund is. And that's the conversation I hopped into when I joined this call was about the group fund, right? So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, let's collect everybody's money together, have one massive group buy. So everybody who participates will be able to collect on the benefits that are being provided. And as soon as that money is collected, I have to send it to the developer. That's how we get the tokens. We have to move it over to them. And then exchange, the developer will then send us the tokens equivalent to whatever was written in that ICO post. And then it's our job, because we have a responsibility to the investors to put money in, to then do all the proper accounting work, check, make sure every single penny, every single fraction of an XLM is accounted for. There's no commission that we take at all. Everything that we do is completely for free. And so that way, whatever you invest in is exactly what you expect to get back. And then we do the distribution on it. And that's why the XLMs come in and go out.
Right.
Can I ask?
I'm sorry, Carl, one more thing. I want to make a point. The main question that people have asked is that Emily and Whip have been forefront in terms of the Stellar tokens and so on and so forth for almost 2 years now, right? They're probably two of the most well-known names within crypto and in Stellar as well. Okay, and the question is, if they've been doing this nefarious activity for however long they want to say, why are they not arrested yet? Why are they still here doing the same exact thing? So what am I able to share a slide on here or I don't know if I can.
Yes, if you'd like to, just you just hit share your end and I'll bring it up here. No problem.
Okay, all right. So let me preface it before I bring it up that they say the Secret Service is just about to go after Emily. They're going to arrest her and Whip, and they know all about this. And well, it happens that about a month and a half ago, I did a show on the Holly Ciliano show with an actual Secret Service agent in the crypto fraud division. Okay, so that's what he does for a living. In fact, it couldn't even be recorded because it wasn't allowed to be recorded. So it was a one-time event. Whoever was able to view it was able to view it. And I was on the show. She had asked me to join him on the show talking about the various scams and frauds that occur in Lobster and in crypto in general. So, we were on there. We spoke to each other. We had a dialogue, got along well. So I decided to ask a question of him with regards to this. Actually, two questions. And that's why I want to bring this slide up. Let me see if I can share it here.
Down the bottom, it should say present somewhere and then share screen.
So while Nick is trying to figure out the screen share, I'll share another story as well, which is also, guys, documented in that exposure debunk call. A lot of the narrative that the Khazarians have been peddling is, oh, I'm, as soon as I'm caught or I catch wind of, people onto me, I'm going to disappear. I'm going to close down my channel and I'm going to go and run away and hide and maybe try to escape to another country. Well, I've been here every single day. I haven't left. QSI has not shut down whatsoever. We're still thriving. But more importantly, I've been in and out of the country multiple times for the last year. So if it were true that I had an arrest warrant out, or that I had, whatever nonsense they're peddling, I would be arrested trying to, hop on a plane.
Yep. I'm led to believe that there were 2 police investigations in Australia, and both of them died within a day or 2. There was nothing to see here.
Can you guys see that?
Yep, it's up, mate.
Okay. So on the all the way on the left was the reasons as to why Emily and Whip have not been arrested by the so-called people that have been putting out these false allegations. So they made up all these different reasons why it takes a long time, and they have to gather their evidence and they're watching. And I'm not going to read through the whole entire list. Yeah. So I essentially what I did was I sent a message to this actual Secret Service agent of the cryptocurrency fraud division, and I asked them 2 very specific questions, which is the center slide. It says, assuming you had a complete money trail from a known owner of a crypto wallet all the way through to the point where it was being offboarded from an exchange wallet, how long would it take to trace the money from the exchange to their bank account, assuming it was a normal U.S. citizen? Okay, because they've said we have the whole trail from the beginning all the way to the end, to the offboarding, and then the money is taken by Emily and Whip. So I said, okay, well, if that's the case, because they're saying it takes years, and it really, so that was the first question that I asked. The answer is on the right side from the agent. A trace, as you described, should not take very long, assuming you have the wallets, which they said they had, the transaction, etc. But again, this assumes that the transactions were linear, as you described in the question, simply going from the wallet to the bank. The point of that is that they said they've traced all these wallets, these so-called experts that have been saying that they're stealing, all the way to the end, to the offboarding. So it should be fairly straightforward to trace it from there to Emily's bank account or Whip's bank account.
Yeah.
Okay. And in fact, I know of a case that this agent was on recently, and that money actually didn't even go local, domestically. It went internationally to several different areas, and they were able to trace it within 24 to 48 hours. Okay, so it's a lot of baloney that they're saying that the reason that nothing has happened is because it takes a really, really long time. Okay, but the even better question, and the one that I think should probably shut this whole conversation down, is I asked the second question: have you ever been involved in a case where an individual or entity suspected of crypto fraud, who has been reported to law enforcement and evidence has been submitted, where they remained in the same exact place and position publicly in full view, continuing to perpetrate the same fraud day after day, year after year, with no arrest or detainment for questioning? Emily and Whip have been on every single day. They're not hiding. They haven't run away. So are they being allowed by the white hats to steal from everybody? Okay, you can steal from all the people and just continue on without any addition. And the answer is on the right. As for the second question, no, I have never been part of a case like that. No one I directly know in my office has ever been part of a case like that either. So, in other words,
no, I'd say that would be a standalone kind of case.
You don't let them sit there and steal and steal and steal and steal and steal and steal every single day while they're educating people, putting out recommendations, involving in IC. I mean, the whole thing is ludicrous, honestly. But I just wanted this is from an actual Secret Service agent on the cyber fraud task force. So if that doesn't put this to bed, then I mean, I don't know what else possibly could.
No, I agree.
It's actually even more ludicrous, Carl, because when all of these, defamation claims first came out last year, first of all, they doxed me, right? So me, my entire family, parents, brothers, cousins, uncles, aunts, everybody in our family tree got doxed. So they know exactly who I am. They have all of my information. They even went onto my LinkedIn profile and said, oh, because she went to Columbia University, she must be a communist. Because she's Chinese, she must be a communist, right? Like these little things that they're making up. But the very first iteration of all this money laundering, they actually said that I've stolen trillions of dollars and that they have all of the evidence. They have receipts. They actually use the word receipt, which doesn't exist. And they said this case is bigger than Bernie Madoff. Everybody will know. And then over time, they keep narrowing it down from trillions to then it was billions, and now it's millions. And it's like, well, if you have evidence, where is the evidence? If this is bigger than Madoff, the whole world would know about it.
Well, that's that was the big surprising thing for me when I started, turning the pages on QSI and looking a bit deeper into it. There was, people can say all they like, but at the end of the day, prove to me that you are a victim, and nobody can. And quite surprisingly, including Quantum Brownie, when I brought the question up with him across a coffee table, I said, "Show me a victim." He still can't show me a victim. And I'm not having a go at him for that. It's just we need to be very careful about what we say and who we say things about, because at this time, it's as much about us learning to be honest with ourselves and honest with those around us as it is, figuring out the truth about what you guys are saying. So I'm very careful about making sure that at least when I do open my mouth, at the time I believe every word that comes out of it. I might have to go away and do a little bit more research. And this has obviously been proven out with what's going on here with QSI and on the Voice of Freedom. I've learned more in the last 2 weeks than I did in the first 8 weeks. And it's been a very beneficial learning experience because I've had all of the negative questions thrown at me to ask and to try and find answers for. And I have been able to find answers for every one of them without digging too hard and using a little bit of clear thinking. Is this the biggest problem the world is missing at the moment? Have we forgotten how to do clear thinking, guys?
I think so. That's actually something I discuss with a lot of people that I work with, from the white hats down to Nick, down to other people on the team. And it's like, it goes back to what you were first saying when I started to join the call, right? It's like discernment. People don't have discernment anymore because the cabal has actually conditioned us to become dumber over time. They've poisoned us, whether it's the food, the air, everything, down to poisoning our minds and teaching us to learn the wrong way. So we become less efficient, less effective in understanding and processing information. And then the cabal takes that and they spin it around and they cause more confusion, knowing that most people are lacking some kind of reading or listening comprehension skills, or even attention for that matter, right? The whole ADD nonsense that's kind of just grown out of control. Yep. So they prey on people who are already easily confused, and they throw gas on the fire by creating false narratives. So
yep.
You have to put some time in learning what you're getting involved with so you don't get fooled by people who know that you don't know much, and they spin things around so that you're confused and you believe what they're telling you, okay? And who would benefit more by people getting out of their tokens and not getting involved with this and not becoming humanitarians? Is it the white hats that would benefit, or is it the black hats? Do they want people to do humanitarian work? Do they want people to become wealthy and independent? Obviously, the answer is no. So, these people have an agenda, and they're trying to dissuade as many people as possible from getting involved. And you have to be willing to put a little bit of elbow grease in and do some research. You can't just buy things and then expect that everything is going to be told to you as all the questions and things that come up. Just like anything else, you can't become a professional in anything you do unless you study. So you have to be willing at least to put the minimal amount of time in order to understand what you're doing. And Emily and their team have done a phenomenal job actually creating courses and all kinds of educational materials that make it easy for you to not have to search the internet, and yet still people are not willing to put in the time, so much so that Emily has to force new people coming in the channel before they're allowed to speak and make comments to have to go through some of that education before they come on, because otherwise they can make comments that will create issues and just create confusion. So you got to be willing to put at least a little bit of time in before rushing to judgment on something.
You need to understand what area you're playing in and understand how it works. So yeah, keep your mouth shut and watch for a while is probably my best advice.
And if I add two things to that, so first of all, our educational material is out of best practices. It's because so many of us have been scammed by scammers. We've bought the wrong assets. We've put the wrong kind of trade orders in there at the wrong price point. We didn't know what we were doing. And we recognize that we're not the only ones who made mistakes. Most people learn by making mistakes. So our course is basically a collection of what not to do and things that we've learned to do over time. So it's kind of like, learn from us to help minimize your own mistakes. So that's the first thing. And then, every couple months ish, we go and we update the material based on the new information that has come out. So that's the first. The second thing is actually Nick and a couple other people, Cranker was on that call as well. This is maybe like a month ago or so. We did a call where we were talking about, how Stellar, because it's so new, is actually very similar to a startup company. And we're drawing all those comparisons. So if I go back to what Nick was saying about how people need to put a little bit of elbow grease into becoming a humanitarian, I would actually argue, no, you need to put a lot of elbow grease into this. You need to put a little bit just to buy the asset and get involved in the ecosystem. But if the white hats are going to be distributing wealth to people, and I don't know how many zeros people are going to get out of this, well, they're not going to give it to people who are completely irresponsible, who don't take, any amount of time to learn what they're doing. Just like, Nick's been in investments for a long time. He's not going to sit there and manage people's wealth or institutions' wealth to, the billions, maybe the trillions of dollars of degree if he hasn't studied yet. And you're not going to open up a successful business, right? Like if you're sitting here going, I want to become a humanitarian in the future when I have billions of dollars. If you just sit there on your couch all day long and you have no idea how to actually put a team together and then, create your operations, lead a bunch of people, well, that's not going to happen for you. So we're trying to teach people the right mindset so that they can be successful in this. But that starts with taking responsibility for your own actions and going through the learning curve and the ascension piece of it, right? Because we don't want just people to get rich and have money to throw away. We want people to do things consciously so it can also be much more efficiently and help raise everybody up at the same time.
I think our whole perception of rich is going to change because everybody's going to be wealthy. Nobody will be more wealthy than anybody else because it won't matter how much more wealthy you are. So I think people's perception of wealth and as you say, once the pressure is relieved, you don't have to worry about how you're going to pay your electricity bill or your school fees or whatever. Then I think you're right. All our eyes will turn on toward what we can do to benefit the greater good for us all. That's where humanity will take great leaps forward. But I have a fear that humanity is going to take great bites out of itself leading up to that point, because we are a greedy mob. We are very centric, focused. And that's because we have been programmed that way.
Yeah. And I agree to that to a certain extent. I think that's the reason why a lot of people who do believe that kind of greedy mentality, it's all mine, I don't care about anybody else, and I want it now, more importantly, those are the ones that we would consider are flooding out of QSI. It's the ones that don't have that other kind of mentality. Because as an example, nobody would in their right mind buy the Zimbabwe bond and expect to then liquidate it tomorrow, right? Yeah. All of us in that side have been said, we've been taught to hold until the flip. It's the same thing over here. So it's just a mindset in terms of where their education is at and what they believe in from a more philosophical standpoint. Yeah.
So just before I let you go, I would just want to address one thing that's come up through the week. There seems to have been some sort of a connection between you and Whiplash in the last week or so. Have we all made friends again? Are we all good?
It's interesting. I actually had a very long conversation with his best friend today. Yes, I do know Whiplash in person. I know his whole family. I know his best friends. And I'm probably one of the few people who can actually say that. So I had a long conversation with his best friend, and he's going to have a chat with Whip. And we'll see what happens in the next couple of days. The main I guess, disconnect right now, because I've known Whip for a very long time and I've worked with him for a very long time. And he is a phenomenal person. He's probably one of the most genuine, kind, caring people that I've ever met before. And so what he's doing now, it doesn't jive with me for one fundamental purpose. These people who I personally believe, right, and that's the disconnect. He doesn't believe that they're scammers. I believe that they're high chance that they are scammers. The whole reason why this came about, this big argument between us for the last couple of days, is because there's a series of domains that came out last summer. And I don't remember how many. It's like, I don't know, let's say 4 to 10 domains, something like that. And there are a bunch of companies behind that where the companies are legitimate. And the original developer of the token was also legitimate. So they went through the whole KYC process. They have all the contracts, everything, I's dotted, T's crossed. And what happened is that was around, I want to say maybe June, July of last year. And around October is when SPIA then contacted Whiplash for myself and said, hey, can you please pause on this? Because I've learned that, somewhere along this process, the people that you've been talking to have actually gotten fired from the company. But because they were the ones that they minted the assets, they're the token developers of the asset, they control the wallet. That's very dangerous. Yeah. And so he then asked us to pause. If these people try to contact you, push them all over to me because I have to re-KYC them. And until I can find the right team to KYC, which he's not just doing it with his government database, he's also talking to the actual team. I don't know exactly who inside like the company itself, but I know he's had a couple contacts. So I've gotten messages from Ralph of SPIA who is saying like, hey, Jenny, can you confirm, are these, the right people that I should be speaking with? And then she'll say yes or no. And on the back end, if he gets, wind that there could be possibly somebody who's legitimate, he's going to KYC them anyways.
Yep, right.
Well, from October till now, he has not successfully KYC'd anybody. And what's happened is these same group of people, the Annette Jensen, Jeanette, don't remember her, Jeanette Silberstein, I think is her last name, Claudia Hayes and Brian Hayes, these accounts have created multiple accounts on Telegram. I've actually lost track of how many there are because what happens is in the past, Whiplash and I would receive all their PM. We would block them, send them over to SPIA for verification. He would say, nope, these are not the right ones. So we probably have a list of 30, 50 false Telegram accounts.
Wow.
And that is a very conservative number because there was one time where they actually messaged using 5 accounts. So 5 Brian Hayes Telegram accounts messaged us in a row because every time we blocked it, they would come up with a new one. No, I'm the real one. No, I'm the real one. It's incredibly confusing. So I've told Whiplash and I've told his best friend earlier today, I said, I want to know when KYC is completed. When that process is done, then I will endorse the asset. But until then, there has not been a single team identified that's been the legitimate team. So were the assets good to begin with? Yes. But who's controlling the wallet now will determine the fate of the assets.
Right.
So what's ended up happening with a lot of the other tokens that we have launched before, when those teams have become corrupted and those the members have been fired, just like with this case, Ralph had to go KYC the new group of people. And because, in some cases, they were not able to retain control of the wallet, the developer wallet itself, they had to mint a new coin and do a token swap.
Right.
Okay. So that's what I'm waiting to find out. And who knows if it's going to take days? It could take months because he has to wait until the right people come back into the play.
Yeah, sure. All right. Emily, thank you very much for joining us today. Nick's just popped out to go and, I don't know, chase the dog or something. I will bring in Jane from QSI Australia, who's been sitting in the background the whole time. I just didn't want to shove everybody on the screen at the same time. Jane, I just want to thank you personally for helping hook this up today. And Emily, can I tell you that without Jane's effort, you would have lost me weeks ago, just beyond me. Really, when it comes to numbers, I've got eyes like poker machine rolls. They just roll around in my head. And it's not a good start when I've got to start talking about shit like this. Jane has been able to help me understand a great deal. I am lacking in QSI training. And somebody pointed that out in the chat there earlier. Yes, I do. Vince has done a certain amount of the training, but I have done absolutely nothing, mainly because I'm caught up doing other things. But I will be getting into it. I'm very intrigued to learn a lot more, and I have 100% faith in it. I have, until somebody can bring me an actual victim. And I think we've pretty much discounted in the last week or so that there are victims anywhere. And in today's show, you know, you've clearly given us an example or shown us how, if there is a victim, by all means, come out and show us. But there isn't one. There cannot be a way to do it. I guess the only question that I have left is bonuses. So when you invest using the group buy, you invest, you get some XLM back. Where do those XLM come from? Have they been taken off somebody who has lost, or have they been generated, or where do they come from?
So that's a good question. And keep in mind, so I'm saying this more for the audience so people don't get confused. Some of our ICOs have additional bonuses like an XLM back, and some of them don't. So please make sure you read the actual ICO posts specifically so you know if you're expecting one or not expecting one. That being said, if there is one that does have an XLM bonus, it's actually coming directly from the developer. So when people get their hands, they roll up their sleeve and they get their hands dirty and they track what's on the ledger, they will always see that it's only the developer who's sending me the cashbacks and also the XLM bonuses. It's not coming from any other wallet. So it's very, very clear if they actually look at the blockchain.
Because one of the arguments was, for the group to win, there has to be losers somewhere. And it was sort of pointed out that the people who might have been getting the tips inside the group and then buying outside the group and losing their money might have been providing the bonuses to the people in the group.
No, absolutely not. No. Because especially none of that is happening before we get the XLM. So if somebody's buying outside of the group fund and then they cash out before the cashbacks, first of all, they would lose money automatically. That actually makes zero logical sense when you look at the order books of how things work. And I don't know if that's something you'd be interested in. We could definitely do another call in the future to talk more specifically about order books and how to
more knowledge is great.
But so usually what happens is, anybody who's cashing out, they lose money because the price hasn't gone up yet. So if they buy it at this and they sell it, it's only going to sell downwards, right? That's the price crash that people are referring to. And the reason why the price drops is because a lack of liquidity. There's not enough money floating in the ecosystem right now to support the price points. That's all coming in the future. So this—
Don't suppose you've got a date.
Yeah. I have ideas of a date, so let's just say it's going to happen before the end of this year, because they've already made announcements that that Stellar has to open up publicly to the world because all the NDAs are lifting at the end of the year. And they can't do that. They can't open it up to the world if they don't reset the servers, which would also include resetting the Lobster servers, getting rid of all the scam warnings, because the Stellar one is actually okay. It's just the Lobster one, the Stellar.expert ones, those have to be reset, because you can't have the masses with, hundreds of millions of people coming in going, oh my gosh, what's the scam thing? So they have to clean the system out, and then they have to lift the NDAs, and that's when Stellar will start to make more public announcements. So I've been told that'll be at the end of the year. I don't have a specific date in mind. Right now, it's kind of a floating month-ish. So let's say end of Q4, and then as I get more information, I'll make more announcements on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tremendous. I wasn't really expecting you to give us any indication of a date, so I think that's a bonus all around. You've done well. Congratulations. I guess one last question about the whole thing. Is Charlie Ward still on the team?
Charlie has been, I won't say MIA. He still reads messages. He'll respond to me as long as I don't ask, hey, how is Tara? Has Tara seen the evidence yet? Because he's charged his assistant, his name is Tara, with collecting all the evidence and digging through them. And from my knowledge, and maybe Nick might know as well, because we've both been liaising with Tara, she hasn't yet finished the investigation. So I think that's the reason why Charlie hasn't made any statements. But otherwise, if you don't ask about this and you ask Charlie about anything else in the world, he's still very responsive.
It's all good.
I think he's just, being on the precaution side.
Yeah.
Well, I sent them 36 pages of information plus 12 videos and 5 audios, so maybe it's taking a little bit of time to.
I sent him an email that said you can come on the show anytime you like, but I've never received a reply. So I don't expect to. Guys, look, I will let you go. It's late where you are. It's early where we are. Thank you very much for taking your time on a Saturday night, Sunday morning to help the Voice of Freedom listeners understand a little bit more about QSI. And I hope we've relieved a lot of the tensions that people might have been experiencing while we discussed that. There are people who are never going to believe, and that's fine. There are people who are nervous but keen to believe. That's fine too. My suggestion, Jane, I'm sure you're going to do the plug for QSI training. The QSI education is imperative.
Yes. QSI beginners, Carl. How many times have I said that you need to go and do it?
Yes, I know. I might go and spend some time on it today. I'm sorry.
Good.
So maybe a few of my viewers can join me. Let's go and do QSI beginners together.
Highly recommend it. And make sure you request to join each section as you go through when you get your 80% on your quiz. And then
So I'm told the problem is I'm not allowed to talk until I've got 80% on the quiz. I'm likely never to say anything.
That's all right. We can see the results in the background, and I know your username.
Oh. I want to make something clear for everybody. In our beginners training, we have a 3-part module, right? 1 part and then a quiz, and then you have to pass that quiz to get to the next part. The reason why we put something called QFS proofs in the beginning of that is because we want people to understand that this is intrinsically part of the Q plan. It's part of the wealth transfer. If they cannot get that kind of theory in their head and understand and agree with it, there's no need for them to invest at all into these stellar assets because they will have zero confidence in it. So you have to, first of all, believe the Q plan and then understand that all these false narratives about the WF being bad or the UN, the IMF, the CBDCs, we dispel all of that with evidence, with tangible evidence that people can go and research themselves after they've seen what we presented. And Nick and I have done countless calls on this topic by now. But that way they can verify everything that we put out there. So it's only after they're confident with this information, confident that there is a wealth transfer coming, then we recommend getting involved into Stellar this early.
Yep, cool. Thank you once again, guys, for coming on and joining us today. And I hope we can do this again in the future. And I think there is a lot of training that is required from all of us on my side of the fence at any rate. So I'll definitely undertake to do that training. I don't want to waste people's time asking stupid questions. And I realize most of the questions are answered in the training. A lot of people to try and get them into the training or get them involved in this aren't going to begin it without asking or getting answers to some questions beforehand. I hope I've helped a few people get those answers, and maybe we can move on from here going forward. I certainly am now 100% of the feeling there is no scam involved. And until such time as anybody can bring forward a victim without changing the definition of the word victim, because I think there's probably going to be some people who'll try and do that, then I'm all ears. But up until then, I don't want to hear about it. It's just bleating. It seems to me, in a lot of cases, people have tried to game the system through greed and have lost, and then they want to complain about it. So I'm not the right person to complain to about that shit. I don't care. Buyer beware.
Sorry. Before I hop off, can I add one last thing I want to mention real quick? So this morning, I can't remember, how many hours ago, depending on what time zone you're on, but let's say roughly 12 hours ago-ish, today, whatever that day is in your time zone, Disclosed TV, which I think most people are familiar with that outlet, they actually came out with a post saying that they have now discovered and confirmed that over in the UK, there's actually a government unit. It was a secret government unit that was put together for counter disinformation unit. Okay, so the UK government put together a team, and this team is all about disinformation. And they were the team behind saying, the coronavirus is like the vaccines are good for you. You want to stay away from ivermectin and stuff like that, and all the thing about election integrity, how that's just one big scam, right? So this kind of people. Well, the reason why I bring that up is because in their secondary post that was immediately after, they named a company. The company is logically.ai. So if this sounds familiar, it's because last June, there was a defamation article put out against Whiplash and myself, and it was written by Logically AI, which is that AI company. It's the AI journalism team. And I've been telling everybody this is defamation. It's just a smear tactic because all the information that came to them was from the Miriam, the Rocky, the Khazarians and the Illuminati group, because that's their entire narrative. So not only, and you saw this in the video, Carl, but you saw that I had posted a little snippet of that interview where the author of the article himself said, we could not find any actual evidence. We're only thinking that it must be true because it's such a massive operation. And he says it twice, that there's no evidence whatsoever. Well, today, that's when we learned from Disclosed TV that group, where Ernie Piper, the author of the article, is also the editor of Logically AI.
Yeah, right.
That is a disinformation unit directly from the UK government, guys. You cannot make this up.
No, wow. Well, that's a really good discovery too, because that sort of thing can go hidden on the net for weeks or months or years. So that is a really good get so early. Congratulations on that. Congratulations on the whole thing. I think what you're doing, particularly the humanitarian side of it, is something I'm very, 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 very keen to be involved in, and anybody who feels that they want to help their community, I think, is something we need to look forward to. We need to look towards the quantum future to be able to help our communities. And I think what you're doing is preparing us in a way, well, certainly nobody else is, or very few others are trying to prepare us. And I thank you for your efforts, all of you.
Appreciate it.
Can I just make one last comment as well?
Sure.
Regarding the one of the big issues has been the that the tokens are shell companies and that they're worthless and there's really nothing behind them. I won't go into a big dissertation on this now because it takes some time, but I wanted to mention to Jane if she could put up the link to the video that we did last week on SPACs, which is the structure of why they're structured this way. Specifically, there's no operating company, there's nothing behind it, just like these other investment vehicles that exist in the market today. And I did a whole call explain that because I know that that's been a sticking point. Although if you look at Ethereum and Bitcoin and even our dollar, there's nothing behind those either. So really, there's no asset, no underlying asset that is behind them. But these were structured specifically for that purpose because of a future transaction that will fund them. And if Jane
and this is where Protocol 20 that we discussed earlier comes in.
Well, even before that, when the flip for the quantum financial system comes in, and then the executive orders are acted upon, that will be the trigger for a lot of these assets to come into the system. But this call was done last week, and it'll explain it more in depth for those that want to understand the mechanism behind how they're structured, why they cost what they do, why they're not the company themselves, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and Carl, it is actually already in your Telegram, and I did send you the link as a text message.
Oh, very good. I've only just figured out how to use Telegram, if I'm honest, in the last 3 days. I've found chats that I haven't seen in years. So it's been, turns out if you blow it up and put it on a 50-inch monitor, you can see all sorts of things.
You have got the links for it, and you have had it since it was released.
Right.
Yeah, it'll really clarify what you're buying.
That up in the chat.
It'll clarify people what they're actually buying and what they represent, and that's important to know because if you don't know what you're buying, you can't understand everything behind it. So,
thank you very much for coming on today and explaining the ins and outs of what's going on, giving us a bit of an update with what's going on with Whiplash and some clarity going forward. I feel a lot better about it, and I know a lot of other people in the chat do too. Jane, give us a plug. How do people join QSI Australia?
You've got all the links, and I will resend them to you. QSI New South Wales has their online weekly call this evening on Telegram at 7 p.m.
Okay, so these are all Telegram links, folks. So if you're going to go on the
Telegram
online
links.
Looking, you won't find them on a web page. It's
so
all
I'll resend you the weekly call schedule, which was released yesterday. So, next call up is 7 p.m. this evening for New South Wales.
Okay, so people can find that on the Voice of Freedom Telegram channel too, or you can go under Ozai and find it there as well. Thank you very much, guys, for coming in tonight or this morning, depending on which part of the world you happen to be in. And I really look forward to doing this again. Thank you for taking the time to clear up the questions. I know we are only the dumb colonials, but, you know, occasionally we raise the odd reasonable question.
Hey, you're learning and learning fast.
Trying to.
Carol, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it tremendously. Thank you very much, all of you. Jane, we'll talk and we'll sort something out very near or very, very soon for a bit of an update on what's going on with QSI, and I'll start my my beginner's training, I guess.
Yes, you better start your bit, but it's very beneficial for everyone. QFS proofs, as Emily said, helps you learn and understand how and why we got here. And, you know, all the links, there's a lot of external links included in it, and you'll go chasing down more rabbit holes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very beneficial.
Thank you very much. Look forward to chatting to you again soon.
No worries. Catch ya.
See ya. And hope your Sunday goes well, folks. It's been an early start for me. Jane gave me a call at 6 a.m. Said, "Oh, listen, we can do Emily at 8." And as appealing as that sounded, Nick wanted to join in as well, so we managed to get it all happening. Certainly some answers to questions that I've had in the back of my mind for a while, and I know Vince would have joined had he been able, but I think Vince worked most of last night and may well still be asleep. God love him. At any rate, he did furnish me with some questions, and I think we pretty much flushed out the other ones that I wanted to be answered anyway. So thank you very much, folks, for your time climbing out of bed and being part of the show, or even if you just happened to wake up and found it on, as many people did. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy what's left of your Sunday. If you're in Australia, that's where we are. It's about 20 to 10 on a Sunday morning. And if you are anywhere else in the world, make sure you're looking after yourself and looking after those that come close to you. And whatever you do, keep clear of those dickheads on the road.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!